happy to be joined with Steve Gardner. Does a great job covering baseball for USA Today's weekly spot. Join us on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline as the pennant races are heating up. I'll tell you, Steve, it's always good to talk to you, especially this time of year. Appreciate a couple moments, pal. How you been?
I'm good, Rich. How are you?
I'm doing well. I opened up the show with the Phillies. I think it's time to just kind of stick a fork in them. August was not a very kind month to the Philadelphia Phillies. Then all of a sudden, boom, you had salt in the wound. You get swept by the Nationals. I'm a little surprised, though, that they've basically teetered off this quickly. I don't know if you've got some tired arms. I don't know if it's Gabe always shuffling the lineup. You got some inconsistency with some of that offense. We know they can't hit. We know they can't produce. But I really thought going into the last 11, 12 games of the season, we were going to be talking meaningful baseball here.
Yeah, it would have been nice, but I just think that all the things that went right for them earlier in the season have sort of come back to even out. I mean, the defense has been poor pretty much all season long, but the bullpen has not been great lately, especially losing that 3-run lead in the ninth to the Nationals the other night. And yeah, it's one of those where the Phillies have made some strides, but you can still see there are holes on this team that keep them from getting into that upper level of teams that are playoff caliber.
Well, the one thing, listen, they were 2.5 games out of first place at the end of play on Friday night. I mean, think about that. 7.5 now. 74, 70.
Losing streak while the Braves are winning 5.
Yeah. Well, that's it, right? We talked about it. Who's going to be that team that wins a couple in a row and separates themselves? They were 55-89 at this juncture last season. So, I think it's a great turnaround. I really do. But I gotta question the manager, the manager in this regard with Kapler, the constant shuffling of the lineups and dropping guys and all over the place, and there's no rhyme or reason. And then you want to keep going with Kingery, and then you realize Hoskins has really just been a liability. Is this who Gabe is when you get to the analytics and the sabermetrics and forget about the gut? Is this who he's going to be going forward? There's not really going to be a rhyme or reason, at least to the fan base.
I think you've hit on something there, because he likes to look very deep into the numbers. And if something in this particular matchup against this pitcher says that I need to put these guys at the top of the order and these guys at the bottom of the order, I think it's a trap that a lot of us fall into when we have all this information. Is we want to make use of it, and we want to do something to show that we have the command of all of this info. And sometimes it leads, you've heard the phrase paralysis by analysis. Yep. I think that's maybe what's in play here with Gabe Kapler, because he wants to do things. He maybe wants to make more of a difference than a manager can, because in the end it's all up to the players. But I think it's one of those things where he's learning on the job, and I think as time goes on, he'll find a balance to where, you can, this is where you might want to pull out the statistical stuff, and here you might just want to let the team have the same lineup for a couple of days, 3-4 days in a row, and see how the team responds there.
Hey, listen, this might sound a little too harsh for some of the Phillies fans out there, but I give them a ton of credit for how competitive they were this year, and I think you could have made a case early on for Kapler for manager, manager of the year. But explain to me this. They averaged 4.23 runs per game this year. That's the offense. Last season, when they lost 96 games, they averaged 4.26 runs per game. So you add Santana, Cabrera, Ramos, you replace Galvis, you got a younger shortstop. The offense didn't improve. So if you're speaking to a fan right now, there's no proof you can contend with Hernandez at second, Herrera in center, Alfaro behind the plate. So you're upgrading win-wise, 12, 13, 14 games. To me, some more questions would be answered, but the more I think about it, Clintack, Andy McPhail, you got a ton of work to do here in the offseason.
Well, they do, and they've got a lot of money to do that with. So I think that's the positive thing for the Phillies, because they're going to be in play for possibly a Bryce Harper or somebody like that, one of the big ticket free agents. So I think that's part of it. I think also you have to look at, this is a team that, while they did bring in the veterans this offseason, still fairly young at some of the key spots. I mean, you look at Hoskins, you look at Nick Williams, who's kind of made some strides this year. I mean, there are a bunch of guys that and Kingery as well, who can take some strides in the off season and next season and can be better. I think that's really what they're banking on, is that this franchise gets incrementally better from one year to the next. And if they have the opportunity to add another veteran or a big ticket free agent, then I think the performance this season justifies them to do that.
Kind of a loaded question, and then we'll move on to the other teams here in baseball and these pennant races. You know, typically in basketball, you have the two or maybe you have the big three. In the NFL, you build around the defense and/or you get a franchise quarterback. In baseball, we kind of know some of the faces of these franchises and who the building blocks are. But really, I can't figure these teams out. Their identity, you know, who is that building block, or what player or players do you believe they can really build around?
I think they have to build around Hoskins. I mean, Rhys Hoskins is your best power hitter. He's, you know, the guy that can, I think, put some fear into opposing pitchers. And if he's there in the lineup and doing damage, then everybody else, I think, is better around him. So that's where you go. I mean, frankly, the game is built on power, and you need to have that kind of thumper in the middle of the lineup. And I think he can be that. I mean, he's only 23 years old, and he's put up a couple of you know, outstanding power seasons, or 1.5, I guess you could say. So, yeah, I think he can be that guy.
And definitely in the offseason as a whole, they collectively got to work defensively because they're a horrible defensive fielding team.
And I have to mention Aaron Nola, too, as another guy that they build around.
Yeah, you know, and listen, Arrieta, listen, for what you paid him this year, he wasn't spectacular, he wasn't horrible, but I thought he needed to be great. And he overwhelmed, underwhelmed. I'm kind of in between. You know, I was a little disappointed because I really wanted them to go after Arrieta, and I thought he was going to give them a little more this year.
Yeah, I kind of had the same feeling. And, you know, maybe if he had, and you can't put it all on one guy, but if he had, maybe that's, you know, a handful of wins that they did get, and we'd still be talking about meaningful baseball down the stretch.
All right. You look at the Central, you look at the West. I know you picked the Dodgers to still win the West. Big win by the Rockies last night, mind you. Now all of a sudden they're starting to separate themselves from Arizona. Do you still like the Dodgers when it's all said and done coming out of the West?
I still think that somehow they're going to manage to get it done, and it may just be me being stubborn, but the Rockies are not going to go away, and I think it's just that the Dodgers have a little bit more talent. I'd still expect the Rockies to be in the playoffs, so we'll have that, but one of those two teams, obviously, I think as the Diamondbacks are falling a little bit further back, will come out of the West as the winner. But I look at the Dodgers team and I see so many weapons and so many guys who can, you know, be the star for a night that I think they're the better team in that division and will eventually overtake the Rockies and win it.
How about the stretch of games? How well the Milwaukee Brewers have played over the last 12, 13, 14 games? I mean, they had a couple nice little winning streaks here and there. They stubbed their toe the other night against the Cubs, but then they bounced back and they beat the Cubs and they took 2 out of 3. They're a game back of Chicago in the Central. I mean, again, you got another great divisional race right there.
Yeah, this is turning into quite the race. And those two teams, you know, with the Cubs playing fairly well still, despite losing to the Brewers, and the Brewers winning pretty much every series, I think, for the last month or two, they're the best teams, the two best teams with the best records in the National League. And unfortunately, one of them is going to have a wild card spot.
All right, switching gears to the AL, the Red Sox defeat the Blue Jays. They get their 100th win. Listen, as crazy as this sounds, should you consider David Price as a Cy Young candidate?
I don't know that he's in that top group just because it's been maybe the last couple of months that he's been as good as he has been. And, you know, that injury where he was struck by the ball, you know, it cost him a start or two. So that takes him out. You know, same sort of thing with Chris Sale. He's not going to have the innings total that, you know, Blake Snell will have or Justin Verlander or Garrett Cole. So I think when you get down to it, it's more a case of volume rather than actually quantity or, you know, it's quality quantity over quality, something like one of those two. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know. Well, it's funny you mentioned Blake Snell, because I was thinking about this as well. You always, we're talking. I mean, listen, his record is sparkling. He's 19-5, I believe. His ERA is 2.03. Again, if Cy Young is the most valuable player award for pitchers, then to me, I think he's the front runner right now. I think he should be the favorite.
Yeah, I tweeted that out yesterday, too, as he was working on that no-hitter against Cleveland. I don't see how you can deny him the Cy Young the way that he's been pitching over, pretty much the entire season. You look at, what does he have, 26 consecutive games of starts of allowing less than 3 earned runs? That's impressive, and that's what you want. You want consistency. He's done it. And the win total, I think, is ancillary. It's one of those things you can look at and say, yeah, that's impressive, but the ERA around 2 is impressive. Walks plus hits per innings pitched less than 1, that's impressive. I mean, to me, wins, you can look at them and say it's a product of the team and run support and all that sort of stuff, but we may end up with the guy with the most wins in the American League winning the Cy Young in Blake Snell, and the guy with only a losing record in the National League in Jacob deGrom winning that one. So I think that kind of shows you how unimportant wins really are when you get down to it in determining pitchers' value.
Yeah, it's a great story with Snell too, with 19 wins already this year. The last 2 seasons combined, 11 and 15. So he's 19-5. It's amazing sometimes. Like I always talk about the second-year quarterbacks in the NFL. Sometimes it just takes a pitcher a couple years here and there just to get acclimated, and all of a sudden, boom, they can blossom. Like we're seeing it with Nola. You deal with a couple injuries here and there, and maybe you just kind of peak at the right time. Lastly, before I let you get out of here, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you a Yankees question. Should I start to worry a little bit that this team's not going to make the wild card?
I'll tell you what, Oakland is closing fast.
I can't take the A's. They refuse to lose.
It's scary, and they're doing it with half of a starting rotation, and most of those guys are injured. What did they? I think we had a story in USA Today, in today's paper, in fact, about the A's having 10 injured starting pitchers this season, and losing their best one, Sean Manaea, for the rest of the year. But they continue to win,
Amazing.
And it's one of the most amazing stories of the entire season. So the question, I think the Yankees don't really have to worry about not making the playoffs. What they have to worry about is not hosting that wild card.
Well, that's the thing.
If they have to go to Oakland.
Who you throwing out there? That's another question. Who are you going to throw out there?
Yeah. Well, Severino was a little bit better last night, so I think that gives the Yankees at least some comfort. But I don't know. I mean, the Yankees have such a deep bullpen; they could go with an opener if they were, if they were really thinking about doing everything they can to win. That might be the best strategy.
The only thing I'll say in closing is the A's just this is not the 70s or the 80s. They just never win playoff series, right? I mean, it's just like even when they take on the Yankees and they have those great seasons, it's like they have to win in the postseason. I mean, it's
right.
It's kind of been the knock on them. They always had that. We saw that years ago, the second half run, winning 10 in a row, 11 in a row, 15 in a row. But yet, you got to be able to do it in the postseason. But I like listen at home, and the Yankees have to go on the road. Then you kind of like Oakland's chances there. I mean, the Yankees are desperate. They want to host this game in New York.
Oh yeah, and the advantage that Yankee Stadium gives the Yankees with their offense is huge. So to go to Oakland, where it's not the mausoleum, and it's impossible to hit home runs, as Chris Davis has shown, hitting over 40 this year. But it's certainly not as easy as Yankee Stadium, and the Yankees have lived and died with the home run all season long.
All right, excellent stuff as always. Appreciate a couple moments. We will do it again next week, and I just cannot wait to turn the page and we get into October baseball. We're in store for some great runs. So.
Best time of the year for sure.
I always appreciate it, Steve. Have a great weekend, pal.
Take care, Rich.
All right, you too. Steve Gardner from USA Today.